Kevin here with Notes on Iowa, and today we're taking a look at part 2, day 2 of my 2021 walk across Iowa to follow the 1835 Iowa Dragoons. And on part 2, day 2, I moved from Yellowbanks Park, just south of Pleasant Hill, Iowa. I kind of left the agricultural and natural countryside and headed into the industrialized southeastern part of Des Moines and followed that down MLK all the way to the site of Second Fort Des Moines. So come with me as we take a look at part 2, day 2 of the 2021 walk across Iowa. So on part 2, day 2, I started off along the Des Moines River at Yellowbanks Park and started to just make my way back up to Vandalia Road, and then eventually following that into the southeastern part of Des Moines. As I got a little bit closer to the city, one of the things I was looking forward to was actually catching a glimpse of the principal building. You can see it from a long ways away. It's a feature of the Des Moines skyline. And as I caught a glimpse, I was thinking about the Andreas 1875 Atlas. And this picture we can see here of kind of a country estate with Des Moines in the distance. And I certainly felt like I was making this transition from the rural to the more urban setting as I kind of made my way through the early part of the day, taking a look at kind of extreme southeastern Polk County. Eventually I ended up at a canoe access. I threw the drone up, took a look at that, kind of sat by the river for a little bit, took a break. It was getting very hot. This is a day where the heat index climbed well over 100 as I was making my way downtown, and was walking fast, faces past, but I was not homebound. But as I kind of continued from the canoe access, one of the things I saw, there was a lot of people lining up to dump out different end water products or other things from kind of the chemical industries that are in the southeastern section of the city. Many of you maybe have been to the southeastern part of Des Moines, just south of University there to the Iowa State Fairgrounds, a tradition every summer. I know I've spent a lot of time at the State Fair during my lifetime. But if you were to continue a little bit further south of that, you'll see kind of this blend of industry and agriculture in a variety of different ways. So going through there, you might see the big Magellan site. You might see Chemin Industries, which works in the agricultural chemical industry. Might see Cargill, all sorts of different examples of Iowa industry. As I went past Cargill, one of the things that's really interesting is they were tearing down a huge kind of grain storage facility at their processing plant there in the southeastern part of Des Moines, which I thought was really interesting. When I was going by, the crew happened to be on their lunch break, but I did circle back later and watch them kind of maybe in action tearing that down, which is really interesting, using water to keep the dust down, and then kind of a multi-part process to carefully remove those without damaging the buildings around or stopping traffic even. One of the other things that you can see is the Des Moines Waterworks facility. This obviously in the flood of 1993. It was critical on July 11th, really early in the morning. The levee on the Raccoon River failed as water reached over 25 feet, which ultimately led to inundation of the Waterworks facility and left 250,000 people without water for a couple of weeks. Some didn't have drinking water for many weeks. But as I continued, even though we're in an industrial part of town, saw some signs of live bees pollinating thistles, saw some also meat packing plants, a big part of southeastern Des Moines. It always happened. We've seen heavy industry in Des Moines since its earliest days, especially Des Moines formed around coal during the 1800s. And once that was exhausted, Des Moines kind of moved into a variety of different industries, a lot of them related to agriculture, as I've been talking about. We think about early Des Moines, and my walk downtown, I was thinking about it quite a bit. The idea that I was heading towards the confluence of the Raccoon and the Des Moines rivers, the site where the Dragoons ended up deciding might be a really good place for a new fort, which eventually became Second Fort Des Moines in the early 1840s when Captain Allen, a Dragoon himself, arrived back on the scene. Des Moines, following kind of the fort era, really started to grow, especially following the flood of 1851, which we see here. This is a significant moment in Des Moines history, because from that point on, we really see the city starting to work to mitigate flood concerns. There are, if you make it down there, a restored log cabin, as well as some of the markers related to the Dragoons, as well as first or Second Fort Des Moines, that you can find right there along the river. And if you're sitting there taking a look out, you can see these markers, and you can also see how everything is built up away from the river, although right on kind of the edge there. The cabin that's there is a rebuilt cabin that can maybe give you some insight to what it looked like there. It has a sign that says Birthplace of Des Moines, and you can find Hildy's wonderful mural that's right there, the Birthplace of Des Moines. She was kind enough a couple of nights prior when I first got to Des Moines to come out and talk about her wonderful work. It does depict a dragoon on there, as well as the Meskwaki, and is meant to really take a look at kind of some of these truths in our past. If you go down, make sure to check out the mural, make sure to check out the fort site. Downtown Des Moines is obviously a place I think many people visit. Some of my fondest memories of being a kid were going to the state basketball tournament, because Pella went quite often when I was a kid. And I just think about how I never really thought about in all the trips I made either to Vets Auditorium or Sec Taylor Stadium, or Principal Park as it's now known, that I never thought about Second Fort Des Moines. So make sure if you're down there, you have a chance, go check out those sites, kind of see kind of what this important confluence has done to create kind of this city around it. When we think about Des Moines growing, Des Moines starts at this confluence, continues to grow outward, and today we know of Des Moines as the largest city in Iowa in terms of population. It's our center of our judicial and legislative and executive branches of our state government, and you can go to the Iowa Supreme Court. You can end up at the state capitol building. We have a beautiful state capitol building in Des Moines. And I went there after I kind of finished the day to fly the drone and take a look at some of the things and monuments around the park. There's a lot of interesting historical markers there, not necessarily related to the Dragoons, but a great place to visit nonetheless. So on part two, day two, moved from Pleasant Hill, Yellowbanks Park, finally made it into Des Moines all the way to downtown to the site of Second Fort Des Moines. And it was really interesting to kind of sit there and think about the Dragoons and maybe how much things had changed since they had been sitting at that same site. That's one of the things that throughout the journey I thought about a lot, this idea of what am I seeing versus what are they seeing. And these are kind of my initial observations that you're getting in these videos and articles that are releasing while I'm still out kind of finishing the walk across Iowa. When I get into July, I plan to go deep into the archives and start really working on the historical and other research components of this to put together an end product. But for now, you can get a look at my observations. I appreciate the helpful tips and insights a lot of you are providing. People make this project better every day. And if you have information related to the sites I'm seeing, maybe my part 3 route that I'll be getting started on next week, any of that kind of stuff, feel free to reach out either in the comments or via the contact form on the website at www.notesoniowa.com. I appreciate you taking the time to check out the project and come along with me on the 2021 Walk Across Iowa. Thanks.
There's a lot of good history about Iowa. A lot of people don't even know about it.